Good afternoon, everyone. Indian drama, as we know, has been there for a long time, especially in South Asia, will be there for a long time. And the entire Indian performance tradition is multifarious, multifaceted, has so many sources. A primary source of the origin and development of Indian drama is definitely Natya Shastra. Natya Shastra, composed by sage Bharata Muni, is a treatise that can be compared to Aristotle's treatise on drama, performing arts, called the Poetics. So, like Poetics, Natya Shastra also developed in the Indian subcontinent as a treatise of drama, while Poetics was more or less descriptive in nature, and on the basis of such description, some kind of prescription was inferred upon by Aristotle in Poetics. In case of Natya Shastra, because of its so called divine origin, Natya Shastra has been a kind of text that is prescriptive in nature rather than descriptive in nature. So, this is the basic difference between the Eastern poetics and the Western poetics. Eastern poetics, Natya Shastra, is prescriptive in nature, while Aristotle's poetics uses certain examples in order to describe the prevalent type of plays that were there during the classical Greek time. And on the basis of the description of the plays by Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, and the comedians, Aristotle has come to some kind of inference regarding the dramatic arts. Aristotle proposed to write a book on comedy also. The book is either not extant, the book is not available to us, or even it may be that Aristotle did not get enough time to write a theory of comedy. Aristotle classified drama, dramatic arts, into two types, tragedy and comedy. In Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra, as it is prescriptive in nature, there is no such classification of drama according to the central theme, tragedy or comedy. And the absence of the tragic ending in this poetics, Eastern poetics, Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra, makes this an entirely different type of text. So, Indian drama has originated long ago, and perhaps the first archival evidence that supports the presence of the dramatic tradition is the famous idol of the dancing girl that was found in the archaeological site at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. So, that image of the dancing girl gives us certain evidence that such performing arts were there during that period also. So, this is a period around 5000 years ago, 3000 BC or 2500 BC. There is no continuity that is still found from the Harappan civilization to the historical civilization that has been recorded by us, especially the civilization that has been recorded is just say 8 to 9th century BC old. So, the archival record that is there available to us has classified the Indian history into different types, different stages, and these stages are there well defined by the historians. So, we know that before 6th century BC, there were the rulers, and then came the presence of Jains, Mahavir Jain, and then we have the presence of Buddha. We also have historical information regarding the development of Gandharva civilization. Then we have the presence of the Maurya Empire that is clearly recorded, especially in the stone pillars and the rock edicts that is depicted. That is the archaeological evidence we get. In one such rock edict of Ashoka, we find the first reference to the performance in Indian tradition. So there it is mentioned that during the reign of Ashoka, when he has ruled for 12 years, I'm talking about the rock inscription of Ashoka, the fourth pillar, the inscription is there. So having served the nation for 12 years, Ashoka says that now there is no discrimination among the people. There is no caste system in society. There is no division between the Brahmins and the Shramans. There is no division between the people who are educated and uneducated, because people all over the South Asia, they are privileged to see large spectacles. Large spectacles. So here we have the first reference to the performance that the common Indians might have experienced during the reign of King Ashoka. So King Ashoka was a ruler at a time when the Mauryan Empire was there. And you should know that during the Mauryan rule, Alexander the Great, around the 4th century BC, also came to India, invaded India. And then there was Seleucus, and Megasthenes has recorded several things about India. And among the records that Megasthenes made, he has also mentioned the presence of the performance tradition. So this Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra has been supposedly composed around 5th century BC. And it was composed as the 5th Veda. We know that there are 4 Vedas, and these 4 Vedas are repositories of knowledge created by scholars, rishis, mainly Vyasas. And based on these Vedas, we have a definite information regarding the social conduct. So when the society was in a turmoil in some time very, very long ago, it is stated in Natya Shastra, also stated in Shiva Purana, that when the world was already in a state of turmoil, the Asuras, Danavas, Dasyus, Yakshas, they all came to Brahma, requesting Brahma to give them some kind of text, Shastra, so that they can also have some kind of education. While the divine beings, the gods, Devas, Devyas, they had the privilege of reading the Vedas. Okay, the Brahmins had the privilege of reading the Vedas, but the common people of India, the Asuras, the Danavas, the Yakshas, the Nagas, they did not have the privilege of any kind of education. So they asked Brahma to give them some kind of Shastra, some kind of Veda, so that they can also get educated, entertained, and live a life of joy. So naturally, Brahma asked Indra to suggest something, but Indra said that no, he is not at all capable of writing such a Shastra. And moreover, he is, as a god of gods, busy with his empire. So Brahma then called Bharata Muni. Bharata Muni was an ancient sage, and he, under the request of Brahma, started composing Natya Shastra. So Natya Shastra has a divine origin, like all the epics. So you know, Mahabharata is an epic that was composed by Vyasa, and that epic was written by Ganesha. So the divine origin is always attributed to the text, the scriptural, quasi-scriptural text. But always remember, Natya Shastra is not a scriptural text. Although it talks about the divine origin, it can be regarded as the first secular text that is removed from the religious practices. And in the very introductory section of Natya Shastra, there is a division made between the yagnik performances and non-yagnik performances. The Joggo, yagnik performances, and the non-yagnik performances. And this division is made consciously by Bharata Muni, because Bharata Muni wants to say that The yagnik performances are religious performances, pure forms of performances where the sacred rites or rituals are performed, and any performer participating in yagnik performance is not suitable for non-yagnik performance. So theater developed in India as a alternative to the scriptural performance or the yagnik performance. So we have European, Russian commentators on the Sanskrit theater. They say that Sanskrit theater has divine origin. Sanskrit theater is located scripturally. Okay, it's located as a scripture, scripturally located in the practices of Hinduism or Brahminism. So these are the Western critics who are finding this. But as far as my reading of Natya Shastra is concerned, I find Natya Shastra as a text that was perhaps composed not in a single day or not in a single year, not in 10 years also, but was a text that was composed as a compendium, as an encyclopedia of several theories that were prevalent, that were related to the performance traditions. And gradually these were compiled by Bharata Muni in 5th century BC and attributed as a text having divine origin in order to make people, especially the followers of Buddhism and Jainism, follow the tenets of performance. So this is my reading of Natya Shastra. Natya Shastra has also went through several stages of recension, interpolation, adaptation, changes. The Natya Shastra text that Manmohan Ghosh got was a Sanskrit text. It was written around 8th century AD. So we have a text, Natya Shastra, that we are reading today is of 8th century AD. Okay, although the text is supposedly based on some 5th century BC text. So this is a strange thing that is happening, a text that we are reading first in English translation, that too translated from a text written in Sanskrit in 8th century AD. And that text talks about its divine origin, say millions years ago, having a divine origin. And archaeological excavations say that the text must have existed as a text around 2500 years ago, around 5th century BC. Around 2nd century BC, the first major interpolation or change took place with reference to the text. I think that this text was rewritten after the Mauryan Empire. King Pushyamitra came to rule India. And during the rule of King Pushyamitra, all the scriptures in India were probably recomposed, rewritten. So in the book called Revolution and Counter-Revolution in India, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar talks about King Pushyamitra having commissioned writers to rewrite the extant texts that were available and to write some new text that will become the cultural religious text on which the Indian civilization will gradually develop. So it was after 2nd century BC we have this text that contains certain elements that were not there before 2nd century BC. First element is the representation that is done by the people on the basis of caste. So in the text Natya Shastra that we read today, there is a basis of caste system in India. Okay, there is a basis of graded inequality. There is a basis of structured graded inequality. So the yagnik performance is only kept as a domain for the rulers and the Brahmins. So in the yagnik performance, only the rulers, Kshatriyas, and the Brahmins can participate. So those who can participate in the yagnik performances cannot perform in the non-yagnik performances. In the yagnik performances, again, the audience The person who can witness, who can watch without being a participant, can become the spectator. The spectator can be a member of three dominant castes: Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya. Okay, Vaishya refers to the trading class, Kshatriya refers to the warrior class, Brahmins refers to the priestly class. So these three class that also formed caste in Natya Shastra, they were allowed for Yagnik performance. Therefore, in the origin, the Genesis myth that is created in Natya Shastra talks about the Asuras, the Danavas, the Yakshas, the Nagas going to Lord Brahma asking from the Lord to produce a text, and Lord Brahma then asks Bharata Muni to compose a text that will be depicting the sentiments and emotions pertaining to the three lokas. That is how it has been defined. So what is Natya? Natya in Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra is defined as a depiction, representation, imitation of emotion and sentiments pertaining to the three lokas. Three lokas refer to the heaven, the earth, and the hell. We know that there is again graded inequality in these three realms. Heaven is on the top, earth is where we are, and hell is somewhere below us. So there is this graded inequality. The most perfect is the heaven, earth is a combination of heaven and hell is the world of imperfection. So drama is a mode of theatrical representation that depicts the emotion and sentiment of the three lokas, according to Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra. Now, Bharata Muni, along with his 100 sons, perhaps daughters-in-law, they all together started composing Natya Shastra as a treatise, a compendium of different aspects of performing arts. So in the origin of drama, first we find a reference to the salutations, the questions that are asked by the sages, and the answers that are given by Bharata Muni. Natya Veda is composed by Bharata Muni and his 100 sons, and these 100 sons are also named in the text, and he talks about the styles of performances, and there is a kind of preference for the Kaushiki style of performance. So Indian theatre tradition talks more about the Kaushiki style of performance. Now this Kaushiki style of performance is based on the Gandharva art and culture. Now Gandharva art and culture is a combination of the Greco-Indian culture, the culture of Greece and India. Takshashila, the seat of learning at the time, was a center of Gandharva art, and it must be around 3rd, 4th century BC. So this Kaushiki style or the Gandharva style of art and sculpture must have developed. So this Takshashila, north of Pakistan, south of Afghanistan, is located much closer to Greece. And we know that this Gandharva civilization, the land that was turned into a civilization of combination of the Indian and the Greek tradition, developed during that period, 3rd and 4th century, and under the impact of Buddhism as the state religion of King Ashoka, Gandharva art form became very close to the practices of Buddhism. That was casteless. Okay, but in the text that we get, we find that there is a caste system that is introduced. So Kaushiki style also talks about an artificial, grand style that comes closer to the gods, the divine style of performance, where apsaras dominate in the performance. So apsaras were created. In Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra, it is stated that apsaras were created to practice the Kaushiki style. Even the names of apsaras are mentioned there. So banner festival of Indra, okay, Dhwaja festival of Indra is the first recorded performance that is mentioned in Natya Shastra. So if you regard Natya Shastra as a record of whatever has happened during that primitive time, it states that the banner festival of Indra was the first production of the plays. In Shiva Puran, although we have an alternative history, another type of history, that Bharata Muni, after getting the commission to compose this Natya Shastra with his 100 sons, finally composed this text and went for performance before Lord Shiva. The entire troop went to Kailasha mountain and the abode of Lord Shiva and performed the plays that were there. The Dasarupakas, 10 types of plays were performed before Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva found that this is Natya. Natya means, I repeat again, a depiction, representation, imitation of sentiments and emotions pertaining to three lokas. So it is not simply, as Aristotle has defined drama, as imitation of action that is serious. Tragedy has been defined in such a way. Human beings are required in case of Western poetics, but in case of Eastern poetics, characters can be drawn from three lokas. Three lokas. Okay. So here we have the depiction of emotion and sentiment of the three lokas. So in Shiva Purana, Lord Shiva was shown the spectacle of these Rupakas, the plays, by Bharata Muni. So these Dasa Rupakas, we have Nataka, we have Prakaran, Vyayoga. So different types are there. Okay, Bhana, different forms of performances are there. And these were performed in front of Lord Shiva. I remember one play called Amrita Manthana. That is recorded in Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra, Amrita Manthana, as a performance that was done in front of Lord Shiva. So what is the story of Amrita Manthana? So it's the war between the god and the demons. Asura, Danavas, they were fighting against the gods in order to control the resources of the Indian subcontinent. And then they wanted to churn the sea in order to get the best materials from the sea. So a tortoise was made the base, a mountain was put on the back of the tortoise as the Meru, Mount Meru, and then Vasuki the snake was brought as a rope to churn the ocean. Gradually, after the churning of the ocean, we have the production of Surya Dev, Chandra Dev, Lakshmi, gods and goddesses were produced after churning of the ocean. And finally, we have the nectar, Amrita, Kalash, the pot containing the Amrita that came out. And there was a fighting between the gods and the demons, because they were very powerful at the time. The Danavas and Asuras took possession of the pot of nectar, Amrita. And finally, what happened? They all went to Vishnu. The gods went to Vishnu in order to request Vishnu to salvage them. And Vishnu takes the shape of Mohini, transforms himself into Mohini, goes to the Danavas and Rakshasas, enchants them with her beauty, and steals the Amrita Kalasha and gives that Amrita to the Devas. Devas become victorious, they consume the Amrita and become immortal. Finally, the churning produces poison, and Lord Shiva takes the poison. So this is a play, a dramatic representation, where we have the representation of reality drawn from the tales, legendary tales. So in the banner festival of Indra, we find mentioned the production of the play. So if we just regard Natya Shastra as a text that contains evidence of performance of drama, we can regard that the banner festival of Indra as the first example where the plays were performed. We can also cite Shiva Purana as an example. Puranic literatures were also composed after 2nd century BC and contains several references to such performances. So Shiva Purana also contains a reference to the production of plays like Amrita Manthana, plays that were performed like Tripura Daha, another play, Tripura Daha, that was performed in front of Lord Shiva. After watching the play, Lord Shiva said that there is an essential thing that is missing in this depiction of emotion and sentiment. When Bharata Muni asks, what is that? Lord Shiva simply states in Shiva Purana, I am quoting from Shiva Purana, there can be no Natya without Nritya. There can be no, I repeat, there can be no Natya without Nitya. So there can be no drama without dance. Gradually, as suggested by Lord Shiva, Bharata Muni therefore included Natya and Nitya together in Natya Shastra. So this Natya Shastra is also Nritya Shastra, Natya Nritya Shastra, because within the word Natya is contained the word Nitya, and without Nitya we cannot have a Natya. Okay, without Nitya we cannot have a Natya, and without Natya we cannot have a Nitya. So Bharat Natyam. See, Bharatanatyam, Bharata Muni's name is there in Bharatanatyam. So Bharatanatyam is a form of dance performance based on Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra. All the classical forms of performance like Kuchipudi, Kathakali, Kottayam, all these are based on Natya Shastra that provides the basis of the theatre performance, the performance tradition of India. So there is also a reference to the origin of Jarjara, the origin of the first playhouse. And this playhouse, Vishwakarma makes this playhouse. And this playhouse does not resemble the Western playhouse, the proscenium stage that was introduced very late in the 18th century in India. So before that 18th century India, there were basically three types of performance space that were available. One, I said, is based on the yagnik performances, okay, ritualistic, sacred space where performances are taken. The second space was to produce two types of performances, either Lokadharmi performances or Natyadharmi performances. Lokadharmi performances relate to the realistic plays based on our real life. Okay, these are called Lokadharmi plays. And Natyadharmi plays that are theatrical representation of stories, whatever it may be, but it will be more theatrical type of representation of stories. And these stories required some space of performance. So first space of performance was sacred performance space, where a major space was devoted to the performance of the ritual. Say a yagya is taking place, Ashwamedha Yagya, where we have participants and performers. The Brahmins are performing, chanting mantras, doing all the rituals, and the Kshatriyas are there who are present there. So here there is no separation between the spectators and the actors. There is no separation. All are participants in the yagya. There may be some persons who are watching the entire process, the ordinary human beings, but all the human beings were not allowed to watch the yagya. Only those of the trading class were allowed to watch the yagya. So financiers, they were allowed to watch the yagyas. So the Brahmins, the Kshatriya and the Vaishyas, they had the access to this type of performance that was done in a space that was primarily meant for performance, not for audience. The second type of space is the court space, Sabha, Raj Sabha, any kind of court space where the performances took place. In the court space also we have few audience, especially audience belong to the monarchy, belong to the nobility, king and his relatives. Okay, they are the audience. The praja is not there as an audience, not allowed as an audience. And there the performance space is larger than the audience space. So this is the second type of stage, second type of performance space, where we can say that 50% is meant for the performers and 50% is meant for the audience. The number of audience is also few. So audience can be 1, 2, say 100 maximum, while the performers can be from 1 to several 100 or 200. And the space that was there for the audience and the spectator was divided almost equally. More space was given for the performance. This is the second type of space used for the theater. There is no stage, elevated space, or the proscenium arch in this second type of theater. The third type of theater, where we have the space not equally divided, but major space is given to the audience. Ordinary people can see, and some kind of performance is done in the space that is defined. Say 1/3 of the space is meant for performance and 2/3 of the space meant for audience. And as because the urbanization came late, most of these performances were done on open ground with temporary theater architecture. Okay, Indian theater tradition therefore has, number one, improvised theater architecture. Improvised means artificial performance space is created in an open ground. Second is the permanent court theaters, and third is the permanent scriptural spaces that were there in the temples. So two spaces for performance were already there that had solid architecture. The third space gradually developed. The third space that was meant for ordinary spectacle, for ordinary people, say extraordinary spectacles were also there for ordinary people, that gradually developed the secularization of drama. So we have this secularization of drama. So Lokadharmi and Natyadharmi. So Lokadharmi plays and Natyadharmi plays, they became part of Nataka, integral part of theatrical representation that used a designated space for performance. Badal Sarkar, in his famous essay on the development of theatre, has classified Indian theatre into 3 types. This is a different type of classification. It is not the classification made by Bharata Muni. Bharata Muni in Natya Shastra had made 10 types of plays, classified plays according to their length, classified the plays according to their structure, character, the theme, the storyline. Badal Sarkar says that theatre can be classified into 3 types. Number 1, the first theatre. By first theatre, he refers to the theatre that came along with the ritualistic practices. Okay, folkloric theatre. Theatre that developed as a part of the folkloric tradition. Theatre that developed on the ground with mass participation. People were there and performers were there. Even in Natya Shastra, there is a reference to this form of performance, popular theatre performance. So Badal Sarkar says that there are 3 types of theatre. First is the folkloric theatre with ritualistic origin. Say the Ram Leela performance that is taking place, or the Chho dance performance, the Gombhira performance. So there are different types of performances that are there, that are done in the open environments. These are called folk performances, folk drama. So this is the first form of drama that has some kind of relationship with religion, has a ritualistic origin, but it is not the yagnik performance, rather non-yagnik performance that is outside the temples or the stage. But we also have Ras Leelas. Ras Leelas are performed in the temple premises. So this is the first form of performance. The second theatre, according to Badal Sarkar, was the Western theatre. And Western theatre is a proscenium theatre. A theatre house is there. The performance space is well designed, designated, elevated from the ground, 4 or 5 feet above the ground, where the performance takes place. It resembles a rectangular box. And this proscenium stage was the stage that was imported to India, or exported by the European countries to India and became very popular. This was the second type of theater. The third type of theater Bahadur Shah was talking about was the alternative theaters that developed in the post-independence period on the streets. Okay, that was the third form of theater. Bharatamuni's Natya Shastra does not classify theater in this way. Rather, it talks about the origin of theater from the Yagnik performances. He talks about the gradual secularization of theater, the origin of the first playhouse. When the first playhouse was being built, what happened? So restrictions were imposed. So even in the rock edicts, we find. So in Bharatamuni's Natya Shastra also it is mentioned there that when the performance is taking place, the performance should not allow the presence of the Atishudras, the Shudras, the beggars, women. Okay, they were not allowed to watch the performance. But in the inscription that Ashoka left for us, we find that everyone was allowed to see the performance. So whatever it may be, we can come to this conclusion that the classical Indian drama was well suited for performance either in a playhouse, in a courthouse, in a temple, or in the open ground. So this was possible. So when the first theater was constructed, there is a Vastu Shastra related to the construction of playhouse. According to Bharatamuni's Natya Shastra, the Asuras, the Danavas, Nagas, demons, they all protested. They started disturbing because they were not allowed to see the performance. So in order to protect the performance space from the invaders, God gave 4 pillars. Okay, 4 pillars were erected. In Natya Shastra, these 4 pillars are related to caste, 4 castes: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. 4 pillars were put. And these 4 pillars were then converted into the performance space. As because drama also represents, imitates gods and goddesses. So some kind of permission was required. God, divine sanction was also required. And that was available because this space was transformed into a protected sacred space. Okay, a kind of censorship was done. And the theater architecture is also mentioned in Natya Shastra. So whenever we find this folkloric performance, okay, some kind of arena is marked and audience is not allowed, the spectators are not allowed to enter that arena of performance. In some kind of performances like Ram Leela, that demarcation is not done because most of the actors blend with the common villagers. While the villagers perform the role of the villagers, the actors perform the role of Ram, Shatrughna, Lakshmana. So that is done. So 3 types of playhouses are described, their measurement, all these are described. And we have the square playhouse, the triangular playhouse, the circular playhouse, all these types of playhouse. So this type of variety is not seen in the Western theatre dramaturgy, where we have only the presence of rectangular theatre architecture. But interestingly, the excavation that we have even in Greece and Rome, they talk about circular stage, circular space for performance. Especially the theatre Dionysiac Dithyram theatre of the classical Greek period has shown the flexibility of performance. Village performances were also there. Somehow or the other, the line that is dividing the Eastern poetics and the Western poetics has been maximized. Okay, maximized because of racial differences, and has also been minimized because of the Western prejudice against the Eastern. So Western intellectuals who started working on Indian theatre, they never had this inkling, they never had this belief that a civilization can outsmart the Greek and the Roman civilization. So whatever they thought with the lens of the Western poetics. And when they started searching for the Indian theatrical tradition, they found that it is something great, something greater something better, and something larger. And the Western poetics can only become a subset of a type of play that is defined in the Natya Shastra. So Natya Shastra defines the separation, gradual separation of the theatre from the ritual yagnik performances to the non-yagnik performances. In chapter 4, he talks about the classical forms of dance, nritya, that was incorporated in drama, and these different types of nityas that are essential, that are depicted, described, and defined in this text. Bharatamuni's Natya Shastra also talks about the performance, how the play should begin. So we know that in Indian tradition there is, instead of a prologue, there is a sthapana of the stage. The stage is first established in any kind of classical performance. After that, the Sutradhar comes on the stage and introduces, number one, the theme, the character. After paying tribute to the god, benediction is offered to the god. After the benediction of the god, there is also an offering made to the author of the play. After that, gradual invocation to the god and appreciation of the author. Gradually the story is narrated by the Sutradhar, and Sutradhar is supported by Naika. Naika is there on the stage, and with the help of this pair of Sutradhar and the Naika, we have the representation of the story. Then one by one the characters are introduced, and once the characters are introduced, the play begins with the episodes, and these episodes are presented act-wise. Say Abhigyanam Shakuntala has 7 acts. Okay, and we have 13 acts in Mrichikatika. So this act separation was also there. So one by one the characters enter. All these are described in Natya Shastra. In classical poetics also we have these sectional divisions. We have the appearance of the chorus. The chorus sing songs moving in a circular direction, clockwise, and then in an anti-clockwise circular movement, they sing the strophe and the antistrophe. After singing the strophe and the antistrophe, we have the presentation of the first episode. After every episode, we have the choric song. Okay, the chorus, they sing songs. So every episode is followed by a choric song. After choric song, again an episode. This way it continues. So there is the exode, epilogue sung by the chorus. So that is the structure of the classical drama. Indian drama also has such characteristics, and these are well defined. Some are similar, some are dissimilar. The essence of Indian dramaturgy, Indian dramatic tradition, is the depiction of sentiment and emotion. Okay. If we see the classical dramaturgy of Greece and Rome, we also find the depiction of two types of emotions. Both are cathartic in nature. In Aristotle's Poetics, catharsis is the main effect produced by the cause called drama. Okay, while tragedy is the arousal of pity and fear, and then after the spectacle, the catharsis of such emotion, the emotion of pity and fear. So a cleansing of the emotion of pity and fear done through a tragic spectacle. While the comedy depends on the arousal of happiness, joy, laughter, and through a catharsis of that happiness through laughter, comedy is possible. So again, there is the cathartic or the tonic impact. So laughter makes us feel good, happy. Similarly, tragedy makes us feel sad, but after the purgation of pity and fear, we are transported into a state of calm, a mind that is peaceful and tranquil, and we can attain through the catharsis of such emotions a placid mind. So this is the Western dramaturgy. Eastern dramaturgy, on the other hand, talks about two terms, bhava and rasa. So bhava and rasa. So what is theatre? Natya. Natya is the depiction of sentiment and emotion of bhava and rasa pertaining to the three loka, pertaining to the three lokas. And there, Bharata Muni has identified 8 rasas, 8 rasa that is supported by 8 sthai bhava and 33 vyachari bhava. Okay, sentiments are called rasa, sorry, sentiments are called bhava, while emotion, the depiction of the emotion, is called rasa. So we have these type of classification. The emotional content is very important, sentimental content is very important in case of both the classical European and classical Indian dramaturgy. Gradually, plays were written based on Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra, and that included the poetics that were there, the theory of art. So, bhava is explained, vibhava, anubhava, abhinaya, okay, rasa, all these are explained. Mudras, how the abhineta will be using the mudras to produce different types of rasa, all these are described. Now, going to a short history, this is what Natya Shastra is all about. Now, if we go for the practice of Natya Shastra in the Indian theatre tradition, we find the names of famous playwrights like Bhasa, like Shudraka, like Kalidasa. So, these 3 playwrights have influenced the composition of modern Indian plays also. For example, Abhigyanam Shakuntala, that is based on Mahabharata, an episode from Mahabharata, has been transformed by Kalidasa around 2nd century AD. Kalidasa was a poet writing around 2nd century AD. So, in his work, we have this depiction of the story of Dushyant and Shakuntala. So, this story falls under the category of Nataka, and these are all described in Natya Shastra. Though the example of Shakuntala is not there in Natya Shastra, we find that Natya Shastra closely follows the rules laid down by Bharata Muni in Natya Shastra. Mrichakatika is, on the other hand, a prakaran, another type of play that uses an invented story. The story is not taken from myth, history, or legend, rather an invented story. And through this story, we find that Charudatta, a Brahman, gradually loses his property, loses his worth because he has fallen in love with a woman called Vasanta Sena. And this love is immortalized in this work, and through ups and downs, finally, the lovers are united at the end of the play. Bhasha wrote plays, and some of the plays are extant. He also wrote Charudatta in fragment. 4 acts are now present. So, in Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra, we have 10 kinds of plays, whereas in Aristotle Poetics, we have basically 2 kinds of plays, tragedy and comedy. So, tenfold division of plays, their structure, the act division, all these are described in detail by Bharata Muni. So, these are Prakarana, Samvakara, Nataka, all these are described, the different forms. Okay. So, Ihamriga, Vyayoga, Prahasana, Bhana, different forms of performances. And when we find the folkloric performances that are even today, we find that all these different types have somehow come together in the representation, in the performance that are followed. Although we do not have any kind of written history of the continuity of the tradition, the Sanskritic theatre has become extant. Nowadays, modern Sanskrit plays are being produced, or the ancient classical Sanskrit plays are being reproduced. But as such, Sanskrit drama is not produced as it was produced during that period. Okay. This has been replaced even during the colonial period with the coming of the Britishers. The Britishers came to India, and with them came William Shakespeare and his entire drama. Along with William Shakespeare, other dramatists also came, and with them we have the westernization of Indian theatre. And this westernization of Indian theatre led to a major breakaway from the classical Indian tradition. Classical Indian tradition remained there in the folkloric forms, but the stage theatre got totally replaced by the presence of the Western theatre. Around Calcutta, okay, late 17th century, we have the development of theatres, okay, with the settlement colony that was established in Calcutta. The first extant play that comes to us dates back to late 18th century. Early 19th century saw the expansion of theatre practices. Theatre houses were set in Kolkata. And with the erection of permanent theatre, we have the production of English plays by the European colonists, especially in the military camps. So military theatre first developed, that was called the garrison theatre, that developed in the military camps. You know the history of colonization of India. So it starts from the western coast, and gradually the eastern coast is soon conquered. So settlement colonies around Surat, Gujarat, Bombay, then the southern states like Kerala, then Madras, okay, and then Calcutta. All these became the center of theatrical practices. All these are Western theatres. We call these Western theatres. So Eastern theatre gradually ended with the end of the monarchical rule all over India. This was also due to the presence of the Mughals as rulers in India for a long time. And in the court of Mughals, poetry flourished. Writing of history of Masnavi flourished, but theatre for performances did not flourish, especially in the courts of the Mughal emperors. So there was a discontinuity of the Sanskrit drama in the Indian context. But we have still extant references to the Indian theatrical tradition up to 14th century. So Nalanda University was there, Takshashila, Nalanda, Vikramshila, all these universities were definitely the seats of such performing arts. If you just visit Vishnupur or visit any kind of archaeological site, you will find the images of performances, the depiction of performances. So throughout India, we have the impact of Natya Shastra. A modern writer who is trying to or planning to write something Indian is also influenced by the texts that had an influence of Sanskritic literature, the Brahminic literature. And such texts are definitely the epics, the major epics, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. So even when the modern writers are writing their plays, they are influenced by the histories, by the legends, by the myths, by the epics. And therefore, we have a continuity in that form as far as the content is concerned. We have a continuity of that type of theme, the quasi-religious themes, scriptural themes, even in the modern drama. After the departure of the British in 1947, however, we had shifted our positioning, especially in the theatre, on two broad spaces. So in these two broad spaces are, of course, the Western theatre, the proscenium theatre that was imported from the West, and the alternative theatre that was a continuation of the folkloric traditions, different forms of performance traditions that were there. So we have broadly divided ourselves into theatre of the roots and the theatre of importation, the Western theatre and the Eastern theatre. Both are being practiced nowadays. So we have Kathakali performance, Bharatnatyam performance, say Gombhira performance, Chho performance, that has a continuity of the old folkloric forms of performances that are based on Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra. We also have modern plays, say Mahesh Dattani's plays, Sara or Bravely Fought the Queen that you have read. These are the Western plays. Vijay Tendulkar plays are Western plays. Girish Karnad also wrote using the Western dramaturgy, but the content in the plays of Girish Karnad are essentially drawn from the sources that the Sanskritic plays used, the same scriptural sources. So he can write about Hayavadana. Okay, so the elephant's head is placed. So Hayavadana, he can write on Yayati. So again, scriptural texts are there. Even Indira Parthasarathi writes. So post independence, we have several playwrights who are writing original contemporary stories influenced by the theatrical practices of the West, starting from the colonial period, continuing the same legacy of the colonial theater tradition in their plays. Even the European theater nowadays is not a single type of a phenomenon. It has also gone through several changes. American theater has also influenced the making of Indian theater. Nowadays, if you visit the stage after the lockdown, the Bengali stage, most of the plays that you find on the stage are actually the adaptations of Western plays. Okay, time-tested Western plays. Primarily, these are the adaptation of Western plays, or they are the stories that are Indian based on the structure that is Western. So, Westernization of Indian theatre has taken place in a large scale. We have a few plays that are based on the epical or historical stories. And even when these epical or the historical stories are taken on the stage, they are turned into proscenium plays. Okay, if a story is shaped around, say, Sirajuddaulah or Mir Jafar, the play will be definitely constructed as a historical play based on the plays, say, of William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare wrote several historical plays, or the plays of Bertolt Brecht. Brecht also composed several plays based on history, epic theater based on history. So this is the large-scale westernization of theater. So among the major theater practitioners of India, we have from the colonial period, there were major theater practitioners. I must mention at least 3 playwrights who contributed to the making of the pre-colonial or the colonial theater of Bengal. So these theater writers are Michael Madhusudan Datta, Rabindranath Tagore, and Sri Aurobindo. Because these 3 writers are writing either in English or translating their plays from Bangla to English. Okay, authorized version. So we can say that these are the 3 English playwrights. Okay, who are writing either in English originally or translating their plays from Bangla to English with their consent, or with authority they are translating themselves. So these are 3 English playwrights before independence. Apart from these 3 major English playwrights, we have several regional playwrights writing in different regional languages. Dominant regional languages in which plays are written are Marathi, Tamil, Bangla, Hindi, Urdu. Okay, these are the major 5 languages in which plays are written. Apart from these 5 major languages, we also have plays in large amount written in Kannada, in Malayalam, in Gujarati, even in Rajasthani, Chhattisgarhi. So these are also languages dialects. And even in the post-independence period, we have plays written in the languages of the Northeast India. There are several states, 7 states are there in the Northeast India. So we have literature coming from that in their regional languages. Regional theater in India is westernized, definitely, but it is also very strong. Language is different, but the form is Western. And in the regional theaters, we have seen development, and different playwrights have contributed. Among the English playwrights who are writing in English, mainly we have Asif Karamboy after the independence, Asif Karamboy. We also have Mahesh Dattani, very recently has come. So 90s onward, he started writing. So Mahesh Dattani. So we have Gurcharan Singh contributing a few plays. So the names, the list is very small. Although Tutun Mukherjee has made an anthology of some women playwrights, but these are not significant contribution. So Indian plays in English are not at all very significant compared to the enormous contribution of the Indian regional language writers. For example, Badul Sarkar. Badshah Sarkar's plays are translated in English. Vijay Tendulkar, who writes in Marathi, wrote in Marathi, his plays were translated in English. Girish Kannad has a bilingual writer on the other hand. Girish Kannad has written most of his plays in Kannada language, has translated some of his plays in English, written one or two plays originally in English, shorter plays. So these are the major playwrights whom we come across. In Hindi, we have Mohan Rakesh. Mohan Rakesh's plays are translated into English language and are prescribed for studies. So Indian drama in English and in English translation contains so many plays. So in my next lecture, I will be talking about the historiography of Indian English drama. Okay, Indian drama in English and in English translation. So this is in short I can say about the Western vis-a-vis the Eastern theatre, the growth and development of Indian theatre. Now I will conclude my lecture. If you have any questions, you can ask, and you can even offer your comments. Thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you very much.